Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TexanLive.com post-draft show. I'm Chase Snyder alongside Gavin Moritz. Gavin, it's an exciting time for Texas high school football after the NFL draft.
This past weekend in the NFL draft, we saw 33 players from Texas high schools eventually get drafted, and plenty more signed as undrafted free agents. We'll talk about some of those here today on the post-draft show.
We will talk to the man responsible for letting us see the Texas high school football stars across the great state of Texas. And now here's the man himself, TexanLive.com owner and founder, Bert Brocker. So now we're going to talk about the CeeDee Lamb pick, of course, the former Foster wide receiver going to Oklahoma right after that. Was a star at Oklahoma, and Gavin, your Dallas Cowboys took him 17th overall. I don't think they expected him to fall that far.
No, they said that they had him ranked as their 6th overall prospect on their board, and they said that in any draft scenario that they imagined, he would not be there at 17, and then he slid and fell into their lap at 17, and I've got to be truthful with you, I was nervous that they weren't going to pick him.
Bert, what are your thoughts on the CeeDee Lamb pick at 17th overall?
Well, anytime you go with a wide receiver that, has his ability, you know he can be successful. The key to this kid, and, of course, we had an opportunity to cover him a lot during high school playoffs, and he always went up and high pointed the ball. Everything he did at Oklahoma, even the catch he made, in the combine where he went up completely away from his body, managed to get both feet inbounds. He just shows he has that it factor and should do really, really well. Of course, the big thing is Chason was all over the board, and he's going to be an impact defensive player. Same kind of thing, out of North Shore. Got to see him a bunch because he was actually in our district, and he was very, very disruptive. But Jerry made the decision. He's going to give Dak better weapons out there, and what a big commitment offensively this was this year.
And for Dallas, they also have Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup in their receiving corps, as well as the tight end Blake Jarwin, running back Zeke Elliott, and as we know, one of the top offensive lines in the NFL, and a new system under Mike McCarthy. And they did retain their offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, though he should come back for another season and help run the offense under McCarthy.
Well, and that'll be interesting because, Mike's one of those guys that is an offensive-minded guy. So it'll be curious to see, with Jason, he never really had that. I mean, everybody knows that Jason managed to stay with the Cowboys way too long, but Jerry was very dedicated to him, and so he stuck with him. You can't necessarily blame that, but you also look at their record over the years, and there just wasn't ever really consistency in that particular team. You'd have a great year and then you'd fall back off. So I think Mike brings a lot to the table. I think he'll do a great job there, and hopefully he'll bring Kellen along with him. But no doubt he puts a lot of talent around Dak, and of course you got one of the best running backs, a great offensive line. Cowboys really and truly should be really, really good this year. The thing they got to be careful of is a lot of the other teams, Washington and, in Philadelphia, there was a lot of moves made this year. And, of course, draft picks don't make success stories. You've got to translate to the field. We've seen number one drafts, go and end up bust. And we've seen Donald Driver, who went in the 7th round in '99, become the all-time leading Packer receiver. So, as excited as you are, it doesn't necessarily translate because you got to understand at that next level, everybody on both sides of the ball get paid millions of dollars to play their positions. And you've got to now, you can't do it off of just all ability. And, and I'll touch briefly on Hopkins. Hopkins had that ability, but was he always there to help all the young kids? And at this time, Bill O'Brien made a decision that his team would be more successful without Hopkins there. And I know to the Houston fans, they hate that, but CeeDee Lamb's another, undoubtedly everybody felt like he'd be a leader in the locker room, and he's going to do a really good job for him. So, that's a big pick at 17 for them.
And we watch the Dallas Cowboys probably every week because they're on national television all the time. How much playing time, Gavin, I'll start with you, do you think Lamb will get right out of the gate?
Well, based on the receiving corps, I think he should be a day one starter. I mean, if we're running a 3-receiver set, I think it should be him, Gallup, and Cooper, obviously. And I think CeeDee Lamb's a guy you can move to the outside, you can move him in the slot, kind of the same thing that they've done with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper, just 3 versatile receivers that they have in their corps.
Bert, what about you?
Well, I'm the same thing. 17, you expect that player to be on the field. And in a draft where you've given up Cooper, you've given up some things, you're expecting him to be on the field. And he needed to probably go to work immediately in the film room understanding what Dallas' scheme, where they're going to put him at, how they're going to utilize him. So I'm sure they're going to try to get him signed as soon as possible and get him in there working, virtually for right now to transition into the Cowboys offense.
And then we'll go right into this next question. I'll start with you, Bert. Did you think they would take Chase on if Lamb wasn't on the board?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that at the time he was, to me, the best player out there, especially for what the Cowboys needed. So that was I without no doubt believe that's the way they would have went, which means they probably wouldn't have. But everything on paper said that's what they would take, and instead, they went. You look at everybody they picked up. They had a really solid draft. Of course, Sewu signed an undrafted opportunity to go there and played at TCU, played at Kingwood right there in our backyard. So be curious to see if he can make the roster. If not, at least make the practice squad, get some reps. And this kid, big kid right here out of Kingwood, Texas, has made a difference. And you looked at what he did in the combine. He didn't hurt himself. I really thought he'd get drafted. But either way, he got to pick where he went. Cowboys was interested. So he got a chance to go there and prove himself.
And Gavin, that'll lead me into this question for you. Do you think Sewo Olonilua will make the roster?
I think he has a shot. I know our running back depth behind Zeke Elliott isn't exactly super deep. I believe we still have Mike Weber on the roster, who we picked up a year or two ago. I know they want Sewo to compete also as a fullback in camp, and if we're allowed to have training camp this year, they want him to compete as a fullback and compete with our current fullback, Jaleez Olawale, and I believe he has a shot to make the roster as a fullback and compete on special teams and as a lead blocker, because I think Sewo is a bit of a faster guy for his size, and I think he can compete right away if we plug him into the system and use him properly.
Bert, you said it. We saw him at Kingwood High School. I mean, I saw him a lot going to high school with him. I was the class of 2018. He was the class of 2016. What do you think his role will be if he makes the roster with Dallas?
Well, it's like Gavin said. He's naturally not going to be the running back. Ezekiel's there, and he'll have to fit in a fullback. He has the ability to catch the ball well. He played quarterback in high school. Even in TCU, went in and played quarterback in the bowl game and was very, very successful. So this young man, he doesn't have a place. He was going there, and I thought he was going to play linebacker at TCU. Instead, some offensive players went down. They moved him over to that side of the ball. But he's just a great kid, great family, and I believe he'll have a chance to play in the NFL. I don't know if it'll be this year, but he'll find somewhere, and he'll give 100% every day to try to make sure he finds some way to be on the field.
And let's talk about the other Humble ISD running back in this 2020 draft class, Mr. Taylor out of Atascocita. What are your thoughts, Patrick Taylor?
I got to coach him in 7-on-7 for 3 years with some really good kids. I thought Quan Sharps would get actually drafted. He didn't do very well at Texas Tech. For some reason, him and Kingsbury didn't click, but he went to Louisiana and just about broke every record there of pass receiving. But he's another guy that, Patrick was always a disciplined young man. He runs hard. Had he came out last year, no doubt he would have probably got drafted in the 4th or 5th round. He decided to come back, had an injury earlier in the year, and I thought he made medical redshirt. I even, honestly, when I talked to him, said, man, are you going to look at that? And he's like, no, I'm coming back. And I do believe that hurt him this year, even though he had a good combine. Anytime as a running back, because the NFL, they pound you. I think if he'd have came back with a medical redshirt, his stock would have went up considerably. Now he's going to have to do what a lot of these guys are going to have to do as these undrafted free agents. He's going to have to go fight, and he's going to have to give 100% every play, which I know he'll do. Great family, great young man. And I was hoping to a degree the Texans somehow or another saw a little more in either one of these two guys because, we know we just picked up Johnson, but, there's a little bit of thinness to the running backs. And just because you go somewhere, in this undrafted free agency, that's film that you're going to get at the next level. So every time the ball touches your hand, you got to maximize what you're going to do.
Couldn't agree more. And Gavin, what are your thoughts on Patrick Taylor, your former Atascocita High School classmate?
Well, I thought he was a great at Atascocita. I believe he should be the all-time leading rusher at Atascocita. We saw him play at Memphis behind Darrell Henderson, the guy that was drafted last year in the middle of the draft. And so Patrick Taylor Jr., who's expected to go this year in the 6th, maybe the 7th round. And I was there with his draft party on Saturday, and they all thought he was going to get drafted, and then he did, and then he announced he was going to sign with Green Bay. And I think he should come in and hopefully fight for a roster spot like Bert was saying. He's going to compete behind A.J. Dillon, who the Packers picked on Friday in this past weekend's draft, and then as well as Aaron Jones, the guy that they think Dillon might push out of the running back room in Green Bay.
Bert, let's get into some more prospects we saw when you started TexanLive.com. Of course, let's talk about the 2015 North Shore State champion, Kaylavon Chason, who had a whopping 21 sacks his senior year. What are the Jacksonville Jaguars getting in Chason?
Well, I think the one thing that they're getting is something that's going to be competitive against us because they're in the same division as the Texans. This young man, and I posted it and have never felt any different from it. If you watch him, he has the ability to get a pick six. Some of the highlights on TexanLive.com, we posted up on Twitter and some of our social media, and the kid just flies. I mean, you saw him just absolutely hammer the running back from Sterling on a play 3-4 yards in the backfield, and he carried that momentum to the next level. Everybody thought he was a little bit small, maybe playing that edge, setting that edge every time. But when you have the motor and the ability to do what he did and what he does, he's gonna be there. He is gonna be a big player at this next level, and Watson is he's gonna have to be having where's he at in his head, because he's going to be coming. I can promise you that.
Bert, Gavin, what do you think of Kaylavon Chason?
Well, I mocked him to the Cowboys at 17 in my mock draft that we did on this show last week, and I'd have been happy with the Cowboys taking him. Obviously, they didn't take him because CeeDee Lamb was there, and they valued more explosiveness on offense over an actual needed edge. We didn't exactly need a receiver at 17, but you took the best player available, like I said, the 6th player on their board. But I would have loved Chason to the Cowboys. I'm sad that we didn't get him, but I'm happy that we got CeeDee Lamb. I believe you had to choose one over the other, and I think Chason's going to have a long career in the NFL playing for Jacksonville.
I don't think you could have passed the value up on CeeDee Lamb. Last one, Bert. We'll talk about Tyree Cleveland. I think the Broncos are getting a sleeper. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. And Tyree was another one of those players. He actually announced live on Texan Live where he was going to go, out of high school, and he picked Florida, which was, in reality, kind of a surprise. Had some family ties there. And this young man, again, same thing. I think he had some bad games that probably dropped him down. But like I said, Donald Driver, drafted in the 7th round, and you see what he did. This is another guy that, if he's under the right coach, if he's under the right scenarios, I think he'll really, really excel and probably be one of those unbelievable picks that was way down the board that got looked over by a lot of teams. I mean, for that matter, the Texans, with the wide receivers they have, I thought he was somebody the Texans may look at a little bit more. They chose not to do that. And, we'll get in here to the Texans in just a minute, but he was a guy that I thought in the late rounds they would really look at. And I think he's going to be a sleeper and do a heck of a job.
Thoughts on Tyree Cleveland? You interviewed him at Armed Sports in Atascocita. What are your thoughts?
I thought he was a great young man to interview. I thought he was nice to talk to, and I think he produced a lot at Westfield. We saw him play a little bit of, kind of a Swiss Army knife on offense, and he produced at Florida, had some decent games. Bert said, he had a couple rough games that may have dropped his draft stock just a little bit, but, fortunate to get drafted in the 7th round by the Broncos, and I'm sure he's, waiting eagerly his opportunity to try to make that roster.
All right, Bert, we're going to get into the Houston Texans.
Let me jump back on him real quick. The other thing he is he's a special teams player. You saw that in a return for a touchdown. A lot of these guys will have to play in different positions. A lot of players end up making teams on special teams and then work their way up to that starting position on offense. And I think he definitely has the ability to be a big-time special return player also.
We'll now get into the Houston Texans. Bert, one of the more interesting off seasons in recent NFL history. Of course, they have no first-round pick. We'll get into the DeAndre Hopkins and David Johnson trade in a second, but no first-round pick for Laremy Tunsil, who just signed a 3-year, $66 million contract. What are your thoughts on the Laremy Tunsil deal?
Well, when you went and got him, you have to lock him down. Some people would have liked to see 5 years. To me, if you got a guy in his prime and he does what he's supposed to do, 3 years is fine, and then you can reevaluate at that time. You're already paying him top dollar, and so rather you have to pay him a little bit more. But it doesn't tie 5 years up. You hope that he's everything he's supposed to be. The next 3 years you have him locked in. So I think you have to protect Deshaun Watt. You just have to protect him, and so that was a good move. They got kind of a wild card draft on their pick where they picked up the lineman Heck, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But no doubt, I hope he can figure out how to hold himself about half a second, because really that's the only thing last year. If you really want to pick him, he just seemed like the refs kind of got on him. And it wasn't like he was moving much before the ball was snapped. He just was like a third of a second, half a second off. But once those refs start throwing that yellow flag up in there, they get your number, and that's a tough deal to overcome.
Yeah, he had some problems with that last year. Gavin, what are your thoughts on the Laremy Tunsil deal?
Well, obviously, if you're going to have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, Deshaun likes to scramble around and run around the backfield a little bit, and then we saw him take some big hits, obviously, in the playoff game against the Bills last year, and a lot of people were concerned this guy's health, if he's not going to be protected, he might get hurt a little bit. And they go and they lock up Laremy Tunsil to protect him while he's in the pocket. And then we saw him draft, as Bert mentioned, Charlie Heck, the offensive tackle from North Carolina, to protect Deshaun Watson. They picked him in the 4th round, 126th overall. And I think he's a guy you can plug in at right tackle with Tunsil playing left. Obviously, you want that Joe Thomas type guy playing your left tackle position. I think they got that with Tunsil.
Bert, in the 2nd round, they took Ross Blacklock. Of course, they got that 2nd-round pick because of the DeAndre Hopkins trade, acquiring a 2nd-round pick and David Johnson. Can't let you go without asking about the DeAndre Hopkins trade.
Well, again, everybody has their opinion, and the reality is everybody has their opinion. And at the end of the day, the Houston fans have been really, really tough on that scenario. But the reality is if we can stay healthy with Fuller and Cooper and everything we've done, we give Watson more targets. And one of the things that we saw last year when Fuller went out, Watson was very inefficient. He didn't have anywhere to go with the ball, and it was very difficult. I'd rather have 4 good receivers that I can mix around, put in the slot, and then you got a couple guys that with coming up. You've got some other players in that mix. So I personally feel like that we didn't win the Super Bowl with him here. I feel like that adding more talent around Deshaun is the right thing to do. I know the fans probably will throw bricks at me for that, but I'm okay with that because I really believe it. I think this Texans team, needed to add some more players around that offensive line, around the receiving corps. Johnson is no doubt got huge high sides, but also been hurt a bunch. So, I understand why everybody's questioning that one and scared to death of that. Hopefully, he's one of those guys you get another 3 years out of, and he comes in here and does what he's supposed to do. And really right now, it seems like the NFL is a 1-year deal. And I know later on you're going to talk about your Kansas City Chiefs. And so, and what they did, and they added some key players. And, but the legacies of teams staying at the top and actually winning the Super Bowl, New England has finally been knocked. Now they lost Brady and a whole lot of other. Be real curious to see what Belichick does with that team. Of course, if you look on paper, now they're saying Tampa Bay is supposed to move way up there in the talks of being able to win a Super Bowl. But the reality is every one of these players have to gel together. Every one of these players have to understand where you're going with it. You got to go to practice. You got to give 100%. You got to make sure that everybody every day is getting after it so that Deshaun, when he's looking at a blitz coming, which I challenge him, and, I think that's his big pick. I've watched a lot of football over the last 12 years, and the one thing he does is when the blitz coming, he's got to figure out where that hot receiver is and get rid of that ball within 1 or 2 seconds so that he doesn't take those hits. As much magic as it is watching that young man dance around and bounce off of 3 or 4 tackles and do everything, eventually you're going to get hurt. You got to figure out where your hot receiver is. Receiver's got to be where he's supposed to be. And hopefully that's what the Texans will do this year with the wide receiver core that they now have.
I will say this, if David Johnson stays healthy, no one can deny the talent, but if he does stay healthy, I think it was a great addition acquiring David Johnson because of the security blanket, perhaps.
Yep. And so, like I said, I know that, some of this will have a little bit of bricks thrown, and I'm okay with that. Again, it's all going to come down to, well, how does it translate on the field? Heck, the number 1 pick, Jamarcus Russell, look what he did. Nothing. You know what I'm saying? There's been a lot of Vince Young, as great as he was in college, high school, had a couple good years, and then defense has figured out how to defend him, and everybody can blame it on different scenarios, but this guy didn't stay in the NFL near as long as he should have. And, there's just a lot of examples. Everybody gets paid hundreds of millions of dollars now to do what they do. And they all know what – if a coach is coaching up, these guys know where to be and how to stop a lot. So really interested to see. Plus, Coach Weaver, got promoted to the new defensive coordinator, replacing Romeo. And I like that. Weaver's a super good guy, young guy. Hopefully he'll be thinking outside the box and help make some good choices, on that defensive side of the ball. And by the way, go Texans. I'm going to get out of here. I got a meeting I got to get to. Guys, y'all do a great job. Texan Live, we can't be more proud of, everything we bring here. It's very tough on us right now, with sports out. Pray and hope that football season doesn't get pushed back. And we'll bring some other stuff this summer live. It seemed like yesterday, Governor here on Friday is going to open it up. We're going to do it at a pace, whatever we're asked to do. But I got a couple things up my sleeves, and we'll see how it all goes. Y'all have a great day. Talk to y'all later.
Well, we just talked about CeeDee Lamb with Bert Brocker. Gavin, let's get into the rest of the Cowboys picks. How do you think they did? I think they had a pretty impressive draft.
I think they had a phenomenal draft, and we saw them take Trayvon Diggs from Alabama, 51st overall in the second round. He was an obvious need at corner, and he was one of the top corners on the board. 82nd overall, they took Neville Gallimore from Oklahoma. He's a replacement, I think, for Malik Collins, who left via free agency to the Las Vegas now Raiders. I think he's a value pick. And then 123, we took Reggie Robinson the second from Tulsa, depth at corner. I think he's a slot-type guy that can also contribute on special teams, which is the case with a lot of these young kids, as Bert mentioned earlier in the show. They can make their name on special teams and then move up into a starting spot on one of the sides of the ball. 146th overall, we took Tyler Biadasz, the replacement, I think, for Travis Frederick, who retired just a few weeks ago. Fellow Wisconsin center that we took in the draft. 179th overall, we took Bradley Ane from Utah. I think he's a need plus a value pick. Coming off the edge, we didn't take Chase on in the first round. We took CeeDee Lamb, so I think we have to get an edge rusher at some point later in the draft. We took Ane. And then with our last pick, we took at 231st overall Ben DiNucci, the quarterback from James Madison. I think he's good backup competition for Cooper Rush. Put a little bit more pressure on Mike McCarthy to find that backup option in case, Dak happens to, get hurt or anything like that. All right, so Chase, we talked about Bert's team, the Texans. We talked about my team, the Cowboys, their respective draft classes. Now we'll talk about your team, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions.
The Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. This is a very interesting draft class. In the first round, they took Clyde Edwards-Helaire with their 32nd overall pick. The 32nd overall pick in which they earned for winning the Super Bowl, thanks to General Manager Brett Veach and Andy Reid. And I've decided to trust them with this first-round pick. They have been discussing for the past 17 months that they have needed Kareem Hunt ever since they cut him on that weekend before the Raiders game because of the video from the previous February in Cleveland, Ohio. They have missed Kareem Hunt so much in short yardage situations. And just because they have drafted a running back in the first round, I would like people to use some logic and some common sense. Just because they drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round does not mean they're going to be a running first team. It makes absolutely no sense. When Kareem Hunt was on the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes had over 5,000 yards, 50 touchdown passes, on his way to becoming league MVP. There were far too many times last season when they tried to run the ball and they were only able to get a yard, maybe 2, maybe 3 with Damian Williams. Damian Williams had some good games on paper. That's because against the Vikings he had a 91-yard touchdown run, and against the Chargers in the last game of the season he had an 80-yard touchdown run. He will be a fine player in the new system. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire gives Damian Williams a better role because he's not the bell cow. They needed the bell cow to replace Kareem Hunt, and they finally did it with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who also caught 50 passes out of the backfield. That is 12 more than Henry Ruggs, by the way. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. I can't wait to watch Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this system. Then they took Willie Gay in the second round, a nice coverage linebacker who has plenty of speed, a freak athlete. In the third round, they got a great value at 96th overall with Lucas Niang. Will probably compete day one for the offensive guard spot, may become the right tackle or left tackle in the future. They really like him a lot. L'Jarius Sneed, another freak athlete. Thacarius Keys out of Tulane, both of those guys, both defensive backs, both corners, they desperately needed corners, and I think they both got tremendous value in the both of them. Should be a lot of fun to watch. And then Michael Dana, who they took in the 5th round, they wanted to get him before undrafted free agency. Brendan Daly, the Chiefs defensive line coach, said he was the #1 guy he wanted in day 3 of the draft. He got him. And the Chiefs will look to defend their crown in 2020.
All right, Chase, so next up we're going to take a look at some of the local prospects that were taken and or signed this past weekend. Some of these guys we have highlight videos for. We'll start with the punter Braden Mann from Cy-Fair via Texas A&M, was drafted in the 6th round by the New York Jets. He set the national record in 2018 with 51 yards per punt as a member of the Aggies, and we compare him to Shane Leckler, another former Aggie punter that played a long time in the NFL and is now considered one of the top punters of all time.
Windy day, wind blowing about 15 miles per hour. It's blowing right to left, and that's the direction that the Bobcats will be kicking. And their 4-star recruit kicker, Braden Mann, will kick it away. He's off to Texas A&M after this season. Puts toe into leather, a line drive kick, and it's out of the end zone, showing off the big leg. And Cy Woods will have the football.
Talking about Cy-Fair needing some points coming in, going into halftime. And the extra point is good.
Less than 40 seconds left. Man takes the snap. High spiral kick. Fair catch is called and it bounced to 24.
That's just like they did. And the extra point makes it 35-14. But
How about Braden Mann, man? Congratulations on going to the New York Jets. That'll bring us to Darius Anderson, former George Ranch Longhorn running back and TCU Horned Frog, 2015 state champion and Houston Touchdown Club Player of the Year offensively. Signed after the draft by the Dallas Cowboys. Take a look.
Up the middle, Anderson. What a hole he's going to go! 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown. Darius Anderson, 55. Darius Anderson from 75 yards, outrunning Tyler Harris, who had an angle, but Anderson was able to get away and score from 75.
Rangers defense needs to find some way to get a stop and give their offensive ball back for Snow.
under 3 minutes left to play in the third quarter. They'll move the tight end to the near side. They move Anderson to the left shoulder. Scruggs in motion. Handoff Anderson. Runs it near side looking for a hole. Cuts it inside of the 25, 30. Spins away at the 35, 40. He's across the near sideline to the 50.
Next up, we'll be talking about Courtney Davis, the former Langham Creek Lobo and Texas A&M wide receiver who was signed after the draft by the Minnesota Vikings. Check it out.
The right state. Watson's going to throw. He rolls to his right. Now he heaves it towards the end zone. Davis is there.
He got it.
He got it.
And he got it. Wow.
What a catch by Courtney Davis. Into triple coverage, it looks like right there.
That's exactly what you do.
And here's Watson again in the shotgun. 3 wide receivers to the right, to the left. He's going to fake play action. He's got a man deep. He's got a guy. That's going to be a completed pass. And he's going to touchdown. Langham Creek Lobos. And that's going to be Q Davis on that.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
So first and 10, Watson will throw. He's got Davis. And Davis pulls his way into the end zone.
Left to play in the first half. Robert Barbie gets set to kick it away. Antonio Carter and Courtney Davis are back deep. Davis going to run up and catch this one at the 29. Looks at that far sideline, 40, makes a man miss. He's in the 50. Foot race now, and he's gone. Far sideline to the 30, 20, 10. And Courtney Davis says, you're not going to kick it to me. I'll run up and get it, and I'll take it to the house. Courtney Davis down the far sideline.
That'll bring us to Xavier Jones, former Spring Lions and SMU running back, signed as an undrafted free agent by the Los Angeles Rams. Take a look at some spring highlights.
At least 2. So they're going to hand off their workhorse.
And that's exactly what they got. Uh-oh.
That's Jones. He's going to go to the house, I believe. Yes, he is.
Xavier Jones, number 5. We talked about his jets, and boy, he's got some jets. He did pass. And he's in for the touchdown.
That'll bring us up to a player we mentioned previously in the show, Tyree Cleveland, former Westfield and Florida Gators wide receiver, taken in the 7th round by the Denver Broncos. So now we'll take a look at some highlights from Mr. Tyree Cleveland.
Third about 4 yards. A little play action. Looking downfield, now heaving it forward, and that pass, is it caught? Yes, it is. Tyree Cleveland on the... Looking to throw again. He's got a man wide open, it's Cleveland. He's across the 30. Dodges another tackle in the 20, still on his feet. Dodges another tackle, gets inside the 10-yard line. A great catch and run from Tyree Cleveland to get all the way up.
Phil early in the season. Fake that, or play action, dropping back to pass, tossing it deep. He's got Cleveland open at the 15-yard line, and Cleveland will walk in untouched. Touchdown Westfield off of a 2-play drive.
That brings us to my pre-draft interview with Shewo Alanalua. Caught up with him on Friday just before day 2 of the NFL draft. Signed an undrafted free agent contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Will challenge to make the roster. Take a look.
Chase Snyder standing by, former Kingwood running back and TCU running back Shewo Alanalua, getting ready for the 2020 NFL draft. How have you been doing these last couple weeks and months in this crazy time?
Yeah, good. Just working out, training, trying to stay in shape, getting ready for the NFL.
How's this been for you and your family during this time?
Exciting times. I've been dreaming of this since I was a kid, so it's finally here.
What are your favorite memories from playing right down the road at Turner Stadium for the Kingwood Mustangs?
Oh yeah, sophomore year, going 6-0, playoffs, making playoffs. senior year, playing both sides, running back, safety. High school was a great time,
It truly was. It truly was fun watching you play. Favorite memories at TCU?
Favorite memories, Alamo Bowl, Cheez-It Bowl. Cheez-It Bowl, I had the MVP. That was my best game at TCU, so that's my favorite memory right there.
Who are the teams you've been talking to these last few months?
A lot of teams. I pretty much talk to every team, so we'll see how the draft goes. Yeah.
Good luck to you. Congratulations, and do us.
That'll bring us to Antoine Whitfield Jr., the former standout from the Woodlands High School. Went to Minnesota right after that, probably because he was comfortable there. His dad, Antoine Whitfield Sr., was one of the best cornerbacks in NFL history, playing 12 seasons for the Minnesota Vikings. He was selected in the second round of the NFL draft by the new-look Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Gavin, a penny for your thoughts.
Not only are the new-look Tampa Bay Buccaneers new because of their new uniforms, but they are a new team as a whole. They have Bruce Arians as their head coach. He's coming back for another season. They have Tom Brady, obviously. They signed one of the greatest football players to ever play. Not only the greatest quarterback, but many people think the greatest football player ever. I think Antoine Whitfield can start day one in that Tampa Bay secondary. I think many people's top safety available in the 2020 draft. People had him ranked over Xavier McKinney. People had him ranked over Grant Delpit from LSU, and we see him get taken early in the second round. I think Tampa Bay should be expected to contend this year for the Super Bowl in their own stadium, which, by the way, never been done before.
Never been done before, and that brings us to Jalen Hurts from Channelview, going to Alabama shortly after that, and then Oklahoma, and his story just keeps getting weirder. Going to the Philadelphia Eagles in the second round. Of course, they have Carson Wentz, who they just signed to a big contract extension. Could be because of Carson Wentz injury concerns. Hasn't been all that healthy. Of course, got hurt in the 2017 season because of a torn ACL, then got hurt in the NFC wildcard game against the Seattle Seahawks. Should be a backup, could be using special packages a la Taysom Hill. Gavin, what are your thoughts on this Jalen Hurts pick?
We see Jalen Hurts as a guy that's more versatile and can run a little bit more than Carson Wentz, and obviously you want Jalen Hurts to come in and compete in those special packages, maybe even play a little bit of special teams, who knows. They take him in the second round because of Carson Wentz's injury concern, as we saw in 2017. You mentioned it, the knee injury that led to Nick Foles coming in and leading him to the Super Bowl win. We saw him get a concussion versus Seattle in the wild card last year. They lose that game, so I think the Eagles, they love Carson Wentz. They signed him to the big extension, but they're saying, hey, we're going to put a little bit of pressure on you. We're going to bring in a backup. We're going to try to keep you healthy as much as we can, but we want another guy just in case that we can use in special packages in the meantime.
Last, before we go, I think we need to talk about Jordan Love.
Of course.
Going to the Green Bay Packers. I thought that would be the most surprising pick of the NFL draft before Jalen Hurts, of course, went to the Philadelphia Eagles. But, of course, this was the big surprise of the entire first round, Jordan Love to the Green Bay Packers.
Well, Chase, we mocked him going to the Green Bay Packers last week in our mock draft.
You mocked him. I didn't. I thought you were crazy, but you were right. You were right. Trevor was on your case, too.
Trevor was.
Trevor's wrong. What a shock.
I wasn't super confident in the pick, I'll be completely honest with you. I didn't know if the Packers really wanted to trade up and put that much pressure on Aaron Rodgers. When they did it, when they traded up, I was sitting there and I was saying, this has to be Jordan Love, and it was. I was surprised, but thrilled, obviously, that I got the pick correct. But Jordan Love, they're going to put pressure on Aaron Rodgers. He's nearing 40 years of age, just about. He's been playing in the NFL for about 15, 16 seasons, and they're going to do the Brett Favre that they did with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was the backup to Brett Favre for 2 or 3 seasons, then came in and started. Jordan Love, I expect to do the same thing. Aaron Rodgers, I think, has 2 or 3 years left in him with Green Bay, and maybe we'll see him go somewhere else once Jordan Love's time comes up in Green Bay.
Well, that'll do it for today's TexanLive.com post-draft show. We'll get some more content for you during these tough times during quarantine. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll have more to talk about in the upcoming weeks. We have a lot of good surprises for you.
I would definitely say stay tuned. We have a lot coming up for you guys. As Chase said, as Bert said earlier, a lot more content coming up throughout the rest of the spring and into the summer, and hopefully we'll be back and ready to call some more games by football season.
I want to thank my partner, Gavin Moritz, TexanLive.com owner and founder, Bert Brocker, our executive producer, Jesse Wolf. From all of us here at TexanLive.com, I'm Chase Snyder, signing off from the TexanLive.com studios in Humble.